Hey guys, welcome back to Card Cafe. Today we're doing another most coveted Lianorn deck profile. The girl who Bushiroad has been beating up on relentlessly ever since her release, just giving her the absolute worst cards possible, and has finally had the glow up that she deserves. So, let's not waste any time and get into it. First, we'll talk about the ride deck. With the addition of Vivace, this has really opened up in terms of a lot of options, and except her own, which is not very good. The Rural Ride line is always a standard. It's an amazing rush tool, and in a meta that we're going into that's very fast, very aggressive. You really want to be generating those tokens as fast as possible. There's definitely, if you want to play the mask package, which this is purely Lianorn, then you should totally be playing the Zorga Ride line because that recovery is just can't be beat. And I've even considered running it in this build just because of the utility that it adds, but ultimately this is unmatched if you're looking for just pure raw aggression, which is what Lianorn is now. And we're going to move on to the grade 3s. So of course we're starting with the classic, the everything, our new mother, Lianorn Vivace. Her skills. Yes, my everything. Finally, she has become a real woman. Her skills are, she has the unique unison dress ability, which is if you rode upon a unit in the unison dress or a Lianorn with a different card name, you enter the unison dress state and draw a card. And the unison dress lasts for the rest of the fight. So you can switch between, which is how the mask package works. This is really good. It's a little bit slow just because there's no way to get onto this until turn 4. So you always want to go first. You never want to go second. But when it goes off in tandem with Persona Ride, which is the one thing that it's lacking, is that you don't get to Persona Ride on turn 4. On turn 5, getting to draw those 2 cards pretty much every single turn that you have an extra copy of her is actually fantastic. And then her second skill is ridiculous. It's one of those things where it's you read it and you assume it's a Reddit create a card, but no, they actually printed this. Once per turn, Vanguard Circle. When at the end of the battle that this unit in the unison dress attacked. Nope, that's wrong. When this unit in the unison dress state attacks, stand all of your rear guards for no cost, and then boost her with all of your rear guards, even if they don't have boost. And then, because there's got to be an and then, counterblast 1, choose 3 of your units, stand them, and they all get 5,000 power and drive -1. That's ridiculous. That's incredible. That is a Vanguard restand with no cost that also stands both of your, no discard cost, and it also stands your entire front row. And there's a lot of cards that are really, really strong at playing with this. On top of the fact that she just stands your entire board, there's so many crazy combos in Stoicheia that you really don't expect, which makes me a little bit sad because her best cards are a lot of the things that came out in this set and the last one. But yeah, really, really good card. I'm genuinely blown away that this got printed. And amen. We love you, sister. And that is pretty much the only grade 3 you run. There's definitely arguments for things like Resonance Dragon, as well as other things like Inlet Pulse I considered for a long time, and even some of the newer Magnolia support you can throw in here. But really, that can just end up clogging your hand, and you do kind of want the shield value. Moving on to the grade 2s, we have Luster Impact Dragon. This card is a promo, and it's a box topper, so it's not super hard to get, but of course Lianorn now has 3 promos, which is very funny and agitating to think about. And this card says, during your turn, if you have 2 or more grade 1 or less rear guards in the back row, he gets boost and plus 5k. That is not restricted by anything other than grade 1s in the back row, which, some other cards are very good at making. So you end up just having 15k attackers or boosters pretty much the second you hit your second turn. And that's already good. What makes it even better is that, this is also Grandfia support, by the way, for those of you who don't know. When this unit stood by the ability of your Vanguard with Grandfia or Lianorn, if your Vanguard's power was 33k or greater, Soul Blast 1, draw a card. Soul Blast 1, draw a card. What do you say? Oh, no, yeah, I'm right. When your Vanguard's power is 33k or greater, Soul Blast 1, draw a card, and he gets 5k. So he basically just becomes a 20k booster, or on a Lianorn turn, a 20k attacker. And then the other grade 2 that you're running, because I'm now realizing this deck is mostly grade 1s, is Command of Death's Restraint. What you should be running is Mythiarch Habitat. But there's a couple choices that you can make here. Mythiarch Habitat has a lot of really, really good options, especially if you're running the Zorga ride line. It's just fantastic. But it's because its search effect is really good, and you can actually get it off of this. So you can actually run them in tandem. But what I like about this is that this searches the drop zone. And there's a lot of arguments for like Mythiarch Habitat is deck thinning. You're looking at the top 7. It's good in the early game because it's a grade 1 order. These are all true. But when you're getting into the late game, or when most of your important pieces are already out of the deck, that mill can be, you never want to mill the overtrigger. And considering how fast you go through it from turn 4 onwards, you really don't want to be taking triggers out of your deck at all. And this being able to just completely toolbox your deck. Also, from turn 2, really, really, did I just say toolbox out of the deck? Toolbox anything you want out of the drop zone. Available on turn 2 means that you can pretty much take whatever you want as discard fodder. Like the amount of times I'll discard this and then call it off of this turn 2, great. Or things like the mushrooms, we're going to get to stuff later. But this is a really, really good, solid card that turns your entire deck into discard fodder, which is something that I feel Lianorn really struggles with because, as you noticed, we can't run the cycle cards. Next up, 4 copies of Rosarium Fairy to break up this broken-ass card. Oh my god, it's insane. Starting off the grade 1's very, very strong. On place, retire one of your rear guards. Call 2 plant tokens. No restriction. It's just another Burrow Mushrooms, but better. You basically get to run 8 copies, and it's even better than Burrow Mushrooms because she stays on the board and has a broken second skill. This is such a good card. This is such a good card. It just generates so much advantage for you, so much board presence. And that's why I'm like, if you want to play the deck, you should play it fully as aggressively as possible because this and other cards are just insane. Its second skill is a little complicated, but like if you're a Magnolia player, you know the bear. It's just the bear again. And it's on attack. Very important to note that it's on attack. If you have a Vanguard with Lianorn or Granfia in its name, and your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, choose one of your back row rear guards and increase this unit's power by its power. And you know who's a back row rear guard that gains power, like a lot of it, that you can toolbox out whenever you want? Just a really, really good card and a really, really strong attacker because, you don't get your Persona Ride until turn 4. So this being able to just easily make like 38, 48 columns the second it starts, the second you are on Vivace is just wild to me. It's really, really good. Maybe they shouldn't have printed it, but you know what? Finally, Stoicheia gets something. Next up, we're doing 3 copies of Performing Petal Diantha. You can absolutely go up to 4. I'm just running 3 because there's so many other grade 1s, but this is a really, really solid card, especially in a meta where there's still like a good amount of removal running around. She's just super build your board workshop. A Stoicheia staple that I really don't think is ever going to go anywhere. Of course, we said that about Inlet Pulse, but Inlet Pulse didn't go anywhere by choice. We just ran out of places to put Inlet Pulse. This ability, again, toolboxing from the drop zone, super duper important. And the only thing that makes her sad is that she's restricted to being on grade 3, but she also gets 5k and is a grade 1 herself, so she has tons of synergy with existing cards. It's good. It's a good card. You can totally go to 4. I think you only need 3 just because you're already going through so much. And everything is a grade 1 that gains 5k. Like our beloved Rhythm of Joy, Alentis. She is one of those cards where it's like you don't really think about her too much until, 4 copies. I knew I was missing something. I was like, there's more than this because this is a stupid card. During your turn, if your Vanguard has Lianorn in its card name, she gets 2k. So she's automatically a 10k booster or attacker because that's a continuous skill anywhere. And then if your Vanguard's in the Unison Dress state, she gets 5k instead. So this just becomes a 13k. Like every other, this is actually a 15k. But everything in this deck just gets 5k. And it's really, really good. Sure, she's delayed, but her being a 10k on your first grade 3 turn, even if you're even going second, can really matter a lot in terms of your numbers. And then her second skill is at the end of your turn, if your Vanguard was boosted 3 or more times, retire her, draw a card, and if you have no face-up cards in your damage zone, countercharge 1. Insane. We all, here at Card Cafe, we love cards that take themselves off the board to give you advantage. We love Dorian. That's it. But there's cards like these that are able to sort of remove themselves to clear the board, both in the case of removal of your opponent and also to help you get more cards in hand later, are really, really good. And she is absolutely no exception, especially because in the early game, you don't have as many opportunities to plus until you're on Vivace. So her just being able to explode herself for free into more cards basically means the difference between life and death.
You can also just revive her pretty easily.
Yep, because everything has recursion. 2 copies of Burrow Mushrooms, another Stoicheia staple, really, really important for the early game. I'm genuinely considering going up to 3, but I don't know what I would cut. Just put to soul, call 2 plant tokens. It's fantastic. The only problem that this has is you're not always going to use it, so drawing it in the late game can be kind of unhelpful. But if you're running into a certain Nirvana player, it might actually become really, really relevant for you because without your board, you're nothing. Yeah, good, simple, and pretty much always has utility if you're in a matchup where you're losing parts. 2. Next up, 2 of our beautiful, beautiful Emerald Catboy. This card is just good. A lot of decks are really playing with this specifically because in Stoicheia itself, it's kind of not, the word is not mid, but it doesn't always have the utility that a lot of Stoicheia cards do have. But you go through a lot more soul than you really think you would, mostly because of our beautiful, beautiful draw card boy. So that soul charge 2 that could be pretty much on demand is relevant, and the free 5k that you hand out is also very good for this beautiful boy. So there's a lot of synergy over there. Plus, just applying 5 to things will just make Rosarium Fairy more powerful. And then everybody knows the second skill, it just gets 15k shield, so it's a 20k. Relevant, can matter a lot, can change games, but ultimately not something that's changing the face of the deck. It's just good utility. And you never want to say no to something that's free. The only problem is that if you draw it in the early game, you're going to be holding on to it for a little while because you don't want to just waste your resources. And then, of course, 4 PGs. Make sure you put your Sanctitude in, kids, because the triple drivers are not going anywhere. They are only getting worse. Watch out for Shiranui. And then our trigger lineup, we're doing the Stoicheia over trigger. Again, lots of options. Red over trigger is not a bad choice. Blue over trigger is not a bad choice. And honestly, if you had... No, I would not run the generic over trigger, even if you had the 2 Rosarium Fairy, because you would just pick the same one. That would be fun, though. I've actually never hit this on a Vivace turn, so that would be something very, very spicy to do.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with every trigger at once.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. And when you're not hitting it off of Vivace herself, that draw 2 cards is just always great. 1 singular front trigger. Why? Because it's funny. And this is not me freestyling. I actually saw a topping deck list from Japan that only ran 1 front. And you know what? This front puts in work. If I didn't have to run these draw triggers, I would absolutely be playing fronts. But you kind of have to run the draw triggers because you're not drawing cards until you are on Mother. 4 heals, just standard heals. We're running one of the grade up heals just because it has a lot of utility and we're going to be going into another stride meta soon. So it's not like it's losing relevancy, but if you wanted to play around with this, I would absolutely respect it. But I think, again, the early game is your concern. And these are all relevant in the early game. Whereas in the late game, you should have enough shield just by doing your actions to not have any problems. And then, standard 8 crit. Make sure you play the puppy one. The puppy one's wonderful. I need to get more. And that's it. Thank you, everybody, for
your overall thoughts. How do you like the deck right now?
Oh, yes. I forgot you had to do that. It's very, very strong. The deck is genuinely a powerhouse that I think people are sleeping on. Its biggest weakness right now is genuinely just seeing Vivace. Because everything else works, and a lot of the cards can work without her. I've had a lot of games where I've had to sit on base Lianorn for a very long time And I've been able to survive because cards like Rosarium Fairy, cards like Luster Impact Dragon, the Order, and of course the Mushrooms, things that you can use at any time, pretty much as soon as you hit grade 3 to keep tempo up. Alentis too. Alentis is another really important card. There's so much advantage that you can get. Everything refunds itself. And the only resources that you have problems with can be your Counterblast in the late game or your Soul in the mid game, which again, you have access to things that can mitigate it. And she is just ridiculous. The deck is unfortunately definitely held back by the fact that because so much of its support is generic or good in the early game, you don't really have things like that the other decks that are currently in the meta, like Full Blast, Dredjeweled, we're going to start seeing. And then, of course, the upcoming Stride decks. Cards that are specifically built to level up that deck and make it more crazy. She just does not have that. But she still has a ton of really, really good cards. And you're never going to have a funnier moment than someone having to hard guard this with the over trigger and it not even being one to pass. So, I'm satisfied. I think Lianorn has been bullied by Bushiroad for so long, and she's finally going to get some spotlight, and it's going to be really good for her skin. Mother.
Are there any thoughts on what you want to put for the 4 extra spots we're about to, which we just got confirmation for us is going to be on January 19th?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. Honestly, I would probably just go up on everything. Like
mushrooms,
more mushrooms,
Diantha, more
yes,
order.
More order. I would definitely, again, play around with this in Mythiarch Habitat, see if I could maybe do both. That might actually open up some experimentation with the Zorga ride line in this if I feel like maybe there's better options. I also want to experiment with that one order that we got in set 11, I think. That's all of your rear guards with 5k or less power get 10k.
Yes.
And then you can return them to your hand. It's just a good card. It's a really, really good card. And the deck ultimately can benefit from a lot of variety within it, which I think is really important. No 2 deck lists that I've seen come out stay the same. So I'm really excited to see how those new cards are going to affect it. That's it. Bye. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know what more content you want to see next. If you want to see some more deck profiles, let us know. And that's it. Stay saucy.